Your college football game day has come early.
Goes down the field for Sicky, goes up high. He's got get away from the cop speed, and the ball is free. Woo! What a hit! You got barbecue back there?
From underdog triumphs to powerhouse showdowns, we've got your winning playbook covered. It's BetQLU with Chris Mack, RJ Choppy, and John Martin, presented by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
And for years, the Final Four has meant a lot on the hardwood. And we'll get to some basketball before the end of today's show here on BetQLU. Well, now we're down to the Final Four in football as well. For the first time, the college football playoff expanded to 12 teams. And now we're right back to where I guess a lot of people may have been totally okay leaving it. Plenty to talk about in how we got there to the Final Four teams on this week's edition of BetQLU. Alongside my guys, RJ Choppy and John Martin, I'm Chris Mack. We are brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. You can watch the show. You may be doing that right now. Hi, how are you? On the Odyssey Sports YouTube channel. You can also find us in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts, including inside the free Odyssey app. Download it today if you haven't yet. AUDACY. And then you can take the BetQL network with you wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, listening to us live coast to coast, maybe Friday night, Saturday morning on the BetQL network. We will break down the 4 quarterfinal games that are now in the rearview mirror. Took us an extra day to get to one of them. And, of course, we are thinking of everyone that was affected by the tragedy in New Orleans. But also, we've got now 2 semifinal games, 2 really interesting semifinal games to talk about. And as I mentioned, some basketball as well, with conference play getting started just about everywhere if it hadn't started already. But let's start with the quarterfinal games, and we can dive into what we think of the seeding. That's definitely going to be talked about. That's an angle to all of this. The buys, all 4 of the top 4 seeds, whether you want to argue that they didn't belong in the top 4 or not, got bounced in the quarterfinal round. Penn State by 17 over Boise. They cover on a late Nick Singleton 58-yard touchdown run. Texas had to fight and scratch and claw in double overtime against Arizona State, but they win. Ohio State, 41-21, dominant over Oregon in the Rose Bowl. And Notre Dame, fairly dominant for 3/4 of that game against Georgia as well, but not really a long drive to piece together at any point during that game. We were texting about it as the game was being played, guys, and I guess we can start there, John. Which team impressed you the most of the 4 that won in the quarterfinal round and are moving on to the semis?
I mean, I think it has to be Ohio State. I mean, look, Notre Dame, really impressive performance for sure. But, I mean, that is the backup quarterback for Georgia, who took no meaningful snaps throughout the majority of the season. So, again, impressive that they got it done the way they did. But I don't know if it's altogether shocking. I don't think anybody thought Oregon would get, belt to ass, for lack of a better term, the way that Ohio State put that down. Will Howard is the hottest player in football right now. Just the fact that, Jeremiah Smith had 400 yards at the half. They looked absolutely unstoppable in every way. So I would just say this Ohio State team, it's just funny. You go back and you just sort of now we have the benefit of hindsight, right? We see that, Michigan beat Alabama with most of Alabama's players playing in the game with their backups, right? With Michigan's backups, they won that game pretty handily. If not for that weird loss, we're probably coming into this thing with Ohio State as a favorite. We're saying that who's going to stop them. Instead, we kind of come in. We got a little bit of a discount, right? We got a little bit of a discount because of that. And but no, and all taking all that into consideration, I think the answer has to be Ohio State.
It's got to be Ohio State, man. Like, they've been just the most dominant team without question. It makes you wonder, what happened in the first, because they had some. I mean, they had some dominant games. They also sleptwalked at times. They had some mental lapses, and you do wonder, would they have put these performances together if they hadn't lost to Michigan? Did that refocus them? For one, but then the other is, how would that have affected? I mean, that was a domino effect on the entire CFP. Everybody else would have been knocked down a peg. Penn State would not have been in the conference championship game. Notre Dame is probably now the 8th seed. Penn State's the 7th. Everybody gets knocked down a peg. It just completely changes everything. How does the matchup? How would Penn State have fared against Indiana or Tennessee against Notre Dame or Texas if they had to play SMU? We don't know. Like, everything changed. So it was. They clearly are the most dominant though right now, and it's not even. I don't know that you could have predicted how big the number would have been against Texas after what happened with their game against Arizona State.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to talk about here. One, a crucial Ohio State loss late in the season is clearly a big part, as you guys just outlined, about turning this field not totally upside down, but definitely making it look very, very different. I think it's also still worth talking about how the seeding is handled going forward. Look, I am all for the Cinderella underdog moments. It's why we enjoyed the idea of the field being expanded to 12 teams from 4. Makes it feel a little bit more like March in basketball where anything can happen. And we almost got that in the Peach Bowl. Arizona State nearly made it happen. We're probably a targeting call away from it happening for Arizona State. That being said, I don't know if we need – I'll give it another year. I don't know if when we get to 26 and beyond, we need to continue to see teams like Arizona State and Boise State automatically get buys. That is the part for me that is – I think you want to give them automatic berths. The top 5 conference champs get automatic berths. That's fine. But then from there, seeding needs to be handled probably according to ranking, John.
Yeah, they will. I mean, I just think there's just no world where we should be getting multiple double-digit underdog games in the quarterfinals. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. And if you continue to do this, right, if you leave, all right, group of 5, I don't know if group of 5 will – I don't know if this will be a problem, right? Like the high, it may not be. I don't know. But, if you're going to have a spot for the group of 5, then you're going to have to totally reconfigure, the way you're doing this, because it's just not, for all the viewership that college football gets, they don't really do a great job of rewarding the audience with great gameplay. And I think people sort of, expect when you get into the final 8 here that you're going to have the 8 best teams, and you really don't in the current format. 2 double-digit underdog games can't happen in this round, and that's why they'll fix this. I just have no question about that.
And I mean, look, the teams that had the bye were outscored 42-3 in the first quarter. That's not good for the sport. And we're and I don't look. It's 4 games. It's 1 year. It's a small sample. We saw this in Major League Baseball. The teams that got the bye, they did play the wild card round. They lose like 75% of those series, the division series. They just do. It's you're rusty. It happens. Athletes are trained and designed to play every week or every day, depending on the sport that you're in, or every other day. And when you have these long layoffs, it hurts the product. And then you couple that with the fact that you have 2 teams getting buys that shouldn't have gotten buys. You're supposed to have the best 8. Are we doing? Is this UNICEF? Are we doing charity work here? What are we doing? Let's just get
one argument I might make real quick, RJ.
Yeah,
is if Notre Dame had a bye, they would still have Riley Mills. That would be one argument I would make. That they probably wish they had a bye.
Yeah, and now look, you can make changes. Maybe have the first round games be played at bowl sites, and then the teams on a bye get to play at home.
Yeah, see, I'm much more a fan of getting as many games, and I know we touched on this last week or the week before. I'm a much bigger fan of the idea of getting as many games on campus as possible. I know that's hard to do given all the money tied up in the bowls, and those sites feel like they deserve to be a part of this. But I'll be honest, I don't need neutral site antiseptic venues before the championship round. You want to involve them in the semis? Fine, we could do that too. But the first round and the quarterfinals should all be played on campus. I look at the atmospheres that we got in the first round in particular and think of the fact that if you're Oregon or you're Georgia, you didn't get a home game. And I'm sorry, that matters. Like those teams, especially Oregon, you went undefeated in the regular season. You deserve to get a game at home in the playoffs. So I know it's going to be hard for them to adjust that going down the line, but that's something I'd like to see changed as well. I wanted to touch on this. You guys mentioned Ohio State or the field. That is something we've got presented before us now because Ohio State was so dominant through the first 2 rounds. They are almost even money favorites to win the national championship now, plus 110 at BetMGM and most books. Then you get to Notre Dame, somewhere in the 300s. You got Texas in the 3.5 range as well. And you got Penn State about 5-1, 450. Bless you, to 5-1. So here's the question. At minus 110 on either side, John, would you take Ohio State or the field? Because that's the number I've been told Friday morning is out there in some spots. Ohio State versus the field is minus 110 on either side.
Yeah, I'd bet Ohio State.
Yeah.
I just don't really feel like Notre Dame, even if they do beat Penn State, which, that's a coin flip, right? That's a total coin flip right now, basically. Even if they do beat Penn State, they lose a defender or 2 to injury every game. So by the time they get to the national championship, they will probably be on 6 backups. And I also just don't know if they have the offense, right, to keep up with Ohio State. I mean, the firepower that Ohio State is putting out there is just unbelievable. I mean, they're minus 6 against Texas in the Final Four. I mean, that tells you sort of everything you need to know about how this team is power ranked. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that they can't be beaten, but I wouldn't bet against them. I wouldn't bet against the way they're playing right now.
I wouldn't bet against it. And that's like, look, college football is becoming more like the NFL. You know, that Georgia game against Notre Dame, it literally did come down to 3 plays. It was the fumble in the red zone, the fumble inside their own 20, and the kick return.
Right. Yep,
I mean,
sure
if 2 of those don't happen, Georgia might very well win that game. So, this is not the old college football where you're just better and you wear them down. Like, this is a 2 or 3 play sport. Ohio State seems like the team that is impervious to the 2 or 3 plays, at least in the first 2 games they played.
Well, because they're better at getting the 2 or 3 plays than anybody else. It's, Will Howard, drop back, chuck it up, Jeremiah Smith, run under it, touchdown.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, I hate to oversimplify it, but like, when you've got the best big player on the offensive side of the ball, it's to your point, Choppy. Everything is about a crucial 2 to 3 plays in every game. And if you're Ohio State, you can either offset a mistake that's been made, or you can gain the upper hand as quickly as they did on Wednesday against Oregon in the Rose Bowl with simply a few plays. And again, not to oversimplify it, John, but Jeremiah Smith is the most high-impact player left amongst these 4 teams. I don't want to take anything away from any talent on any of the other 3 rosters, but that is the best player left in the 4-team field.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't know, let's talk about it, right? I mean, Texas's defense is obviously very good, but Ohio State's minus 6 in this game. Penn State, is Abdul Carter playing? What's the deal there? They were different when he left the game. Boise State made that decently interesting for a second after he left. And then obviously Notre Dame is already down its All-American. So we saw against Oregon, Will Howard had all that time back there, man. If you don't have a pass rush, Ohio State's going to be able to basically pick a number. And, without Abdul Carter, if he's out there, that could very well be a different game. But if you're telling me that he's not out there with the other teams that are in the field, yeah, I just don't think they have the horses, man. I really don't.
We are without a traditional SEC team in the Final Four, Choppy. I mean, Texas is representing the SEC, but a year ago they were Big 12. Is SEC Choppy okay with this?
Yeah, it's like the SEC's number one thing that they had, which was depth and talent. They don't have it anymore. No, none of these teams have depth. We're watching. If you go look at all, let's see, I guess there's 8 teams the 8 teams that advanced. The team that had the better quarterback won every game. Aller's better than Jennings. Howard's better than Nico. Quinn's better than Klubnik. Riley Leonard's better than Rourke. I mean, they go down to this week. Howard over Gabriel. Quinn over Levitt. I mean, go down the list. The better quarterback won every game. This is just the NFL. That's all we're seeing right now. And, the SEC for years dominated the defensive line. And for the most part, the offensive lines too. And that still matters. But they're now subjected to the same attrition that all these other teams from all these other leagues have had to deal with. Now they're having to deal with it for the first time.
We'll talk about the quarterback matchups in the Final Four. Is that what decides things in the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl? If not, what is it that decides these games? We've started to allude to some of those matchups already. We dive into each of them in detail in just a moment. Plus, I mentioned basketball gets conference play started. We'll touch on that. Plus, our best bets before we wrap up this week's edition of BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker,
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
sports handicapper Rob Brown,
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
cycling all the top plays,
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
and one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. And it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
Starting to get colder and colder outside, smelling like a stale gym inside. Must mean basketball is here, conference play, and we'll dive into some big games that are happening this weekend in just a couple of minutes here on BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I'm Chris Mack, alongside John Martin and RJ Choppy. Still, though, got to get you our best bets for this weekend, whether it's hoops, whether it's football, CFP. We got a whole week to break this one down, but we are diving headlong into the two semifinal matchups at the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl here on BetQLU to get things started. Thursday night in Miami. It is, I don't know if it gets any more traditional non-SEC. Sorry, apologies to SEC Choppy. If it gets any more traditional blue blood than this. Penn State, Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, 9-9-1 against each other all time. Other than a home and home in 06 and 07, both won by the home team. This was a battle of the massive independents in the 80s and early 90s before Penn State joined the Big Ten. They played 12 straight years from 81 to 92. They each had massive wins against each other, both at home and on the road, including Penn State upsetting number one Notre Dame in South Bend in 1990. But these two current teams, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about quarterbacks avoiding the pass rush and how much work can they do, is about the defenses, getting after the opposing quarterbacks and forcing them into mistakes. We saw it from the Irish in both games, but especially in the quarterfinal against Georgia. And we saw it by Penn State in, well, both of their games, whether it was against SMU in the opening round or against Maddox Madsen and Boise State in the quarterfinal Fiesta Bowl. That's the big question, as John mentioned a few moments ago. Will Abdul Carter be available for this game? As much as they've got other players available to step up, like Denai Dennis Sutton, nobody is what Abdul Carter is, projected as the top defensive player to go in this year's draft. Notre Dame's defense, even without Riley Mills, who we mentioned earlier as well, lost for the season against Indiana in the opening round, still forcing turnovers, making big plays, and getting some help from the special teams as well. So, John, I think you rightfully called this a coin flip game earlier when we brought it up the first time. Notre Dame favored by 1.5, though. I jumped on Penn State money line right out of the gate, not just as a homer, but I really do think the ability of Penn State to generate big plays on offense is what will be the difference here. Not that Notre Dame can't hit home runs as well. I'm looking at you, Jeremiah Love, the 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana. But they had their opportunities against Georgia, and they couldn't really piece together the long drives they needed to, other than to close the game out in regulation in the Sugar Bowl. I think it's going to be under the 46.5, a very tight game, but Penn State wins.
Yeah, this opened 50. I mean, it was absolutely outrageous. I don't know what the what folks were watching, but this is going to be a slugfest. And I will say, like, I don't really have a strong opinion about the side, but what I would say if I was making a case for Penn State is that Georgia and Notre Dame was very impressive throughout the game, but Georgia can't run the ball. Like, their offensive line was getting bullied all night. Like, they couldn't help out the backup quarterback with the run. It's really not what they've done all year long, and they didn't do it earlier this week. So, yeah, I think Penn State will be able to actually do that. We know that. They're going to be able to run the ball quite a bit with Allen and Singleton, and it's going to be a steady diet that Notre Dame, they didn't see it against Indiana. They didn't see it against Georgia. This is going to be a different running back room that the Nittany Lions are going to show up with. And I definitely think that makes them live. I mean, were there moments in that Boise State game where they got too cute? No question about it. But if they just kind of keep it simple, man, and just go at Notre Dame head first, I mean, I think they definitely have a chance to win this game. I mean, not that I'm saying anything controversial. I mean, it's a 1.5. I mean, but I just think that's their best path. And this is maybe the game where the absence of Riley Mills actually does show up.
Yeah, the interesting thing here, and I'm with John. I don't have a great feeling on either side here. But if you look at the path these two teams took to get here. Notre Dame played an Indiana team that had never been in that spot before. Mm-hmm. And then they played a team that had, basically a guy making his first start. And Penn State on the other side, they essentially went against like two group of 5 teams, and they did exactly what they should have done. They dominated them, but this is going to be both teams' real first test, against a quality opponent with a quality quarterback on the other side. Like that's the first time that both of these teams are going to wind up facing that. I do like the under, though. I think this thing is got 20-17 written all over it. I do think this is gonna be one of those old classic slugfest games.
Yeah, I mean, we nailed the under on that Notre Dame Georgia game, and I think this one outlines the same way, for not just because it involves one of the same two teams, but for a lot of the same reasons that you guys just outlined. I also think a lot of this does, and you kind of alluded towards this, John. If Andy Kotelnicki, Penn State's offensive coordinator, does not get too cute, now there need to be moments where you get a little creative, get Aller on the move, maybe away from that pass rush, utilize Tyler Warren. But if he can do all that while maintaining some semblance of balance, like you said, using Allen and Singleton to set up some play action maybe and hit Tyler Warren in key spots, I don't think this is a feed Tyler Warren 10 or 12 times kind of game. It's pick and choose your spots, lean in on the run game, dictate the pace of this one. And don't give Notre Dame an opportunity to make play. Look, Notre Dame is going to win this game with their defense and special teams. Don't give them the opportunity to do that. Right. Keep things simple.
And I would also say, like, I don't think Notre Dame is capable of an explosive pass play. Like, I don't think that's right. I don't know that they can do that. I mean, every time I've seen Notre Dame have a big play, it's been on special teams, or it's been like that 98-yard run, or it's Riley Leonard on the ground, right? So neither one of these teams actually is that explosive. I mean, Penn State just, spams Warren. That's basically all they want to do. They just want to spam Tyler Warren. And, they have a guy, Mims, they can kind of go deep with, but it didn't really work that well against Boise State, maybe one time, I think. So, yeah, I definitely think still there's some meat on the bone at 46.5. I wish I was paying attention when it opened because if I saw a 5, it would have just been a blind under. But I still, I think both these teams are, very the opposite of explosive. So it should be definitely a lower scoring game.
I really wish they could, move this game to like Lambeau. This game should not be indoors or in the South. It should not be in Miami.
You should be able to see dudes' breath as they're lining up from across each other. Yeah.
This game, like, they should play this game in weather that would set the sport back 30 years. Like, that's the kind of weather that I want to see this game played in. This thing needs to have snow.
This is a throwback, definitely. Well, they'll play it in Miami. One thing to keep an eye on, I know we all mentioned Tyler Warren. Yeah. Say hello to my little friend. Xavier Watts, keep an eye on that guy. If you want to talk about Tyler Warren getting limited in Penn State's offense, Xavier Watts played a hell of a game. And had a hell of a season, but a hell of a game against Georgia. They'll be using him, I would imagine, to limit Tyler Warren a good bit. Ohio State, Texas in the Cotton Bowl on Friday night. Longhorns and Buckeyes have only met 3 times in their history. We've got 4 of the top 10 winningest programs in college football history, 3 of the top 5, and somehow they've only met each other like a combined, 22 times between all 4 teams. First was a home-and-home series in 05 and 06. It involved Vince Young in a Fiesta Bowl, Colt McCoy coming up with a big play. But these are 2 teams that everybody expected to be here, to be quite honest. They were both ranked in the preseason top 4. Will Howard still has not been sacked, John, in 2 playoff games. And as I mentioned earlier, Jeremiah Smith is just running all over secondaries. I guess what we thought were pretty good secondaries, too. At least I thought Oregon's was going to be fast enough to keep up. I thought Tennessee's defense would be able to put at least a little bit more than a speed bump in front of Ohio State. But we haven't seen that yet. And I don't know if Texas can get away with some of the mistakes they've made in the first 2 rounds against this Ohio State team.
Yeah, I bet this at open. I bet this at the open of Ohio State +2.
Man, I hope I ended that guy's career.
It was my biggest play of the decade, actually. Ohio State plus 2.
Choppy is still chasing that guy down on social media.
I am trying to find that fool, man. Like, what are you doing? That guy, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, look, people are allowed to make the numbers that they want to make, but that was definitely wrong as hell. It's the wrongest number you will see. But no, this opened 4.5, and now it's at the 6.5. I do wonder, is there a point? And this is like I often struggle in these. Is there a point where it does become just a Texas number bet, right? Is it 7? Is that when you have to just kind of because look, that Texas defense is legit. I mean, they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are a they got playmakers up and down the field, and it's by far going to be the best defense that Ohio State has seen since they lost to Michigan. So, is there a point where I might be entertained by Texas? Yes. Is that moment right now? No.
What is it then? Is it 7? Is it 7.5?
I think if it gets to 7, which if it does, it'll. I was talking to a bookmaker actually about this 3 weeks ago when I was in Vegas. Not about this game, but I was like, hey, if you need X team, right? If you really have like a huge liability on X team, why don't you just make the number 8, 8.5, 9.
Run wild with it.
Yeah, and his response to me was interesting. He said, we don't want those kinds of bets, which I just found very interesting because there's a sharp sect of people, right? And it only this like because the casual person's like, oh, they don't care if it's Ohio State minus 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10. They'll just bet Ohio State because they're the hottest team in America. But you get to 7.5, 8.5, 9.5 on the other side, you might have the sharp money come in pretty big and unfortunately take that number out. So I don't know. Listen, I don't have anything on the game at 4.5. Again, I don't know what I was doing. I must have been asleep at the wheel. I probably would have bet Ohio State. But as of now, I'm just going to kind of sit back and see how big this number gets for the Longhorns.
It's a home game. It's a home game for Texas. It's the tickets are crazy expensive. It's going to be a nut house at Jerry World. I tried to bet it at 4.5, couldn't get to it. It got to 6. Now it's probably like I don't feel good about touching it right now, and I'll tell you the reason why. Mainly, Texas is that classic team that plays up and plays down. I mean, they play up, they play down, and I don't want to. Ohio State was like that too against Michigan. It seems like.
Yep.
I don't want to deal with it because they are. If anybody is as talented as Ohio State, it probably is Texas. Now they don't. I believe in Will Howard more than Quinn Ewers right now. Texas makes some dumb mistakes. They make some dumb mistakes, and we are getting fooled by that second half. They were in control of that football game. They were up 14-3. They had run 2 offensive plays, 2, and they were up 14-3. I think the play for me is if this thing continues to grow and that Texas money line gets up to 250, that might be the wind up being the play for me there is if the money line continues to jump up where it becomes feasible because I think they're a live dog.
Well, like what people have to remember is like these teams are not, and again, these teams are not good to any number. Now, I mean, again, it's only moved 2, so it's not like this massive move. I guess if you want to say 6 is a key number, that's fine. But there is a point of resistance. I feel like we clearly have not hit it yet, but there's a chance between now and Friday that we just might see that.
Man, if it gets to 7, I'm going to have a hard time walking away from it if it gets to 7, because I think there's a lot of good points Choppy made there about the explosiveness of Texas's offense, the home game aspect of this. Look, you've got a Texas defense that may make Will Howard very one-dimensional very quickly. I think this game is as much about the first 5 to 10 minutes, 8 minutes of football as it is anything else. Because if Texas can show that they can hit some big plays, I don't even necessarily have to be for points. If they can hit some big plays early and then all of a sudden, conversely, do it on the other side of the ball, Get Will Howard on the move, get him feeling uncomfortable. It's only going to take, it goes back to what you said a few minutes ago, John. It's only a few plays on either side that is dictating each of these games. And if you get one big play by the Texas defense, force one big turnover by Quinn Ewers in a bad spot, by Will Howard in a bad spot, that flips this thing. And it's a 7-point game staying within 7 all night long real quick. I think that's something to keep an eye on as well. Some big key hoops matchups early in the conference season this weekend. SEC, Big 12, Duke getting things started in the ACC as well. They've had a couple spots here and there. We'll talk about all those and get you our best bets for the weekend all next here on BetQLU.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the You've been listening. Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
Alongside RJ Choppy and John Martin, I'm Chris Mack. This is BetQLU with you every Friday night and Saturday morning, live coast to coast on the BetQL network, and always inside your Odyssey app. You can get us in podcast form. Just search BetQLU wherever you get your podcasts. You can always watch the show as well on the Odyssey Sports YouTube channel. We've gone over the college football playoff semifinal games. Plenty more to digest regarding those four teams over the coming week before those games are played. But for the first time in a while, we're able to really dig in on some college basketball. Yeah, we'll get you best bets in a second, but conference play starts this weekend for the most part. I mean, there have been a few conference games scattered around here and there in spots, but really gets going, in particular in the SEC this weekend. And, you know, we joked around earlier that there's not a true SEC team in the Final Four of the college football playoff, with Texas just moving over this year from the Big 12. They're more than making up for it in basketball, John. I checked Lenardi's latest bracketology this morning, and he had 13 SEC teams in the bracket. And you go, come on, Joe. But then you start going down the list, and we can get into some of the specific matchups we'll see this weekend maybe in a moment. But you start going down the list, and there are a lot of damn good teams in the SEC this year.
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be absolutely insane. SEC conference play. Look, I don't know if the national champ comes out of the SEC. I kind of still need to see Auburn win in a non home environment. That's kind of been the rap with them the last few years. I mean, obviously they have the best big in college basketball in Janai Broome. They've got the guard play. Like, they're deserving at this moment. But I do think there are some, you got Auburn, you got Florida, you got Tennessee. I mean, I think all three of those teams certainly belong in the national championship conversation. Alabama, I mean, it is pretty sick. But, look, UConn's kind of figuring it out slowly but surely. I still think Gonzaga has enough to where they can put themselves into the mix with their big play. But, yeah, I mean, the SEC is definitely the best college basketball league this year, and it's earned it.
It really is nuts, man. I'm old enough to remember when this was a 12-team league, and I'm old enough to remember when this was a one-bid league almost. Like, it was Kentucky, you had a little bit of Arkansas, and then maybe one of the, Ole Miss or Mississippi State had a run. There's a couple of teams that maybe just float their way into the tournament, and it has steadily gotten better. And it's, because they've decided to put some money into it and get some good coaches. And then you add Texas and Oklahoma to the mix, and those have been generally some stable programs. You got yourself a behemoth. You really do. It is a tremendous conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know how any team gets out of this conference with less than 3 or 4 losses. I just don't know how it happens.
It reminds me a lot of the Big 12, and not just because of the Oklahoma and Texas programs that have moved over, like you said, Choppy. Reminds me a lot of the Big 12 of, say, 5-6 years ago, maybe, when it was incredibly deep. And I'm not saying the Big 12 isn't still good, but, it was incredibly deep, and you felt like any of 4 or 5 teams could not just win the conference, but could go on a deep run in the tournament come March. And it's all 3 unbeaten teams that are left are existing in the SEC right now, and they're all in action this weekend. Auburn's still the favorites to win the conference, plus 130. Tennessee at BetMGM, a little lower than 3-1 at plus 290. You got Bama plus 430. Then you get out to Kentucky at 11-1, Florida at 12-1. Some bigger numbers on Mississippi State, A&M, and beyond. Let's talk about some of the games this weekend, though. A Saturday morning tip, 11 Eastern in Lexington. Number 10 Wildcats of Kentucky hosting number 6 Florida. Line will probably sit right around a point at tip, so basically a pick 'em, John. Like I said, Florida, one of those 3 remaining unbeatens. Kobe Brea has cooled off just a little bit in the last half dozen games or so from beyond the arc, but this is a hell of a way to kick off SEC play.
Yeah, it is. I think that what you mentioned, Kobe Brea was. I mean, he was shooting an unsustainable percentage. He's
still up around 49-50% from 3.
But it helps, right? When one of the guys is getting 18, 20 minutes a game is shooting 75% from three, you can win a lot of games that way. And yeah, since he's come back down to earth, it's been a coming back down to earth for the team. Florida is for real, man. Now, are they for real enough to go into Lexington and win? In their first league game. We'll see, but I think they have, between Walter Clayton Jr., they got a lot of guards there, man, and a lot of returners, who have been there and done it. We just saw Illinois go into Oregon, as a 4.5-point underdog and put up one of the, I want to say it was the largest road conference win ever at a top 10 AP ranked team. So, I mean, that was quite the win. But I like Kentucky. I don't love them. And I think, again, is this a game I'm going to be betting? Probably not, but I'll definitely watch it. And I would watch it with the expectation that Florida does get it done.
Yeah. Choppy, how about your guys laying double digits against a ranked Arkansas team, Tennessee?
Yeah, look, I mean, they're a really solid team, but they are thin. They've already lost Estrella for the year to an injury, and then Cameron Carr decided to hit the portal after he had been injured. So they are a relatively thin team, which is going to take its toll during conference play, but they're solid, and they've done it again with another mid-major transfer. This time it's Chaz Lanier, and they did it with Connect last year. Really good team. I think the line's a little bit high. I don't think they cover. I mean, they've also played 2 games in like 3 weeks now because of the Christmas break. I mean, all these teams have kind of taken time off. I don't think they cover. I think they get out of there alive, but I don't think they cover the 12. If Kentucky is a dog, I'd be all over it. I'd be all over it. They've been tested. Florida really hadn't been tested this year. They've gotten to that record. They haven't played any ranked teams. They haven't done anything. Kentucky, meanwhile, has played a couple of them, and they've done pretty well.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm the only one doing a double take as well at the number in the other big SEC game Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, Bama against Oklahoma. That one could be 8, 9, 10 points by the time tip-off comes around. The Sooners, the other one of the 3 unbeatens alongside Florida and Tennessee. Duke Miles averaging 21 points over his last 3 games and shooting better than 50% from beyond the arc. Bama still doing what Bama has done offensively over the last couple of years. Another 100-point game last Sunday. Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears combined for something like crazy, like 14, 15 3-pointers. That feels like, despite that Alabama offense, John, that's a big number to lay to the Sooners the way they're shooting right now.
It is. And, again, we'll see kind of what the market, what their initial assessment of it is. But Jeremiah Fears for Oklahoma is probably a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, top 10 pick. I know his agent, and I mean, he's raving about him. He's raving about him. So I kind of like the idea of, getting 9. I mean, obviously, like, the scary part about Bama is that they kind of are like an NBA team in that they can just spit out a 12-0 run on you. But I kind of like the idea of backing Fears with points here. So if I'm getting 9, 9.5, I think I could get to the window at Oklahoma plus 9.5.
Yeah, that's it.
I actually like Oklahoma in the 9.5. That's a big number, and I know it's a new game, new conference. They probably I can't imagine anybody there has played at Bama, but I think the 9.5 is too much.
A couple of massive games in the Big 12 to keep an eye on as well. Number 3, Iowa State hosting Baylor, who has started to show at least a passing interest in playing some defense lately, and Houston, who has returned to form on the defensive end of the floor the last few games as well. And they will host BYU, but laying a big number. Some games to keep an eye on as well. But let's get to our best bets for the weekend. Before we wrap up here on BetQLU, I don't care if it's hoops. I don't care if it's football. I don't care if it's a future, if it's something for this weekend specifically. Hell, it could be one of those meaningless bowl games that has nothing to do with the playoff, maybe. What do you guys got, John? I'll let you get us started.
Do we have any of those meaningless bowl games left?
We got one. I got
Okay.
an eye on one, pal. Don't you worry.
All right. No, I'm going with the National Football League. You like that?
Yeah,
You
I like that.
I like that.
I'm betting Cincinnati -2.
Come on, man.
Collab.
Yeah, I'm doing it just for you.
Collab.
Oh, is it a collab? Collab alert.
Collab.
Collab alert. We're going for 2-0 here.
There we go,
You know how
baby.
when you're a kid, man, this is the Chris Mack dedication bet. No question about it, man. We're going downtown.
What? He's
No,
going
look,
bet against my go downtown, bet against my Steelers. You can go to hell.
There we go. So, you know how when you're a kid and like there's just certain things that you have to learn, by doing it, right? Like you gotta stick your finger in the socket. You gotta like not put your hand on the hot stove. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how I've gotten there with Joe Burrow in this iteration of him, as they've been basically chasing the entire year to try to get back in the playoffs. This guy is on a generational run. And by the way, he is kicking dog bettors in the balls as a result. Like the Cowboys cover, kicking the balls. The Broncos cover, kicking the balls. He's going to do it again. He's going to do it again as a favorite against Pittsburgh, and I refuse to be on the other side of this man right now. So I am betting Cincinnati to go in there and keep their season alive, right? That's the key. They won't know their season's dead yet tomorrow, so they will give it everything they got against Pittsburgh. I got -2.
That's a great point. I got the -2 as well, but I'm going to throw this one at you. A backup quarterback bowl, or one backup quarterback at least. Give me Jets Miami under 39. Whoa. This is reaching Army-Navy. This is reaching Army-Navy territory of let's see how low the number can go. Under 39, Jets-Miami.
Wow. Oh, man. It's going to be a disgusting football game offensively. All right, speaking of disgusting football games, they're still playing the Bahamas Bowl on Saturday. Buffalo, Liberty. Liberty's been falling apart for a couple of months now. 3-3 down the stretch. Caden Salter's like, peace, deuces, I'll see you. Hey, they were a four touchdown favorite to Kennesaw State and lost. Meanwhile, the Bulls have won 8 in a row, rattled them off and not losing anybody big in the portal, and just laying 3 against Liberty in the Bahamas Bowl. Let's do it, boys. Let's go win some money, whether it's college, whatever it is. We got you covered here on the BetQL Network. For Zach Krull, our producer, for RJ Choppy, for John Martin, I'm Chris Mack. This has been another edition of BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that like Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that like Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett